Hi, everybody. This is Dan Stolberger. Welcome to this week's Kafir Middle East Update. We simply call it the update. It's October 3rd, and we're going to look back over what has transpired in what a week. It was an amazing week. Make sure you grab the PDF PowerPoint that accompanies this presentation. It'll have photos. And I won't be able to get to all the articles that we're covering this week, so grab that. We always start with our news bites. Prophetic, I guess you would say. It was 6 days ago that Bibi addressed the United Nations. His words: "I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place that the long arm of Israel cannot reach." And as he's making this speech, the Israeli IDF jets are heading towards Lebanon to the assassination of Nasrallah. We'll talk more about that, but it's pretty amazing what has taken place. With all that's going on, Biden has come to the front saying he's going to speak to Bibi. He insists that despite everything that's going on right now, an all-out war with Hezbollah must be avoided at all cost. Remember, it was Biden that said, "You cannot go into Rafah." Israel went into Rafah and essentially clinched the war. Now we're being told, or Israel's being told, you cannot pursue any more than what you've done with Hezbollah. Boots on the ground. Israeli troops are in Lebanon at this exact moment. So we're going to see what transpires. If last week was huge, I wonder what this week holds. The truth, however, is everything that's taken place in the north, Israel has not fully eliminated the threat of Hezbollah. There is a possibility of a higher intensity war in Lebanon, which is why Israel is, in a sense, pedal to the metal at this point in time. Interesting that U.S. and Israeli officials have said that the recent strikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon have destroyed roughly half of the Iranian-backed terror group's weapons stockpile, and we know they had hundreds of thousands of rockets. And then an interesting fact, it really doesn't surprise me, but did you know that 51% of adults that are under 30 get their entire news from their social media posts? Let that one sink in for a moment. All right, here's our major articles this week. As we've said, as Bibi was speaking, some look at this as it was a diversion. The Israeli Prime Minister addressed the United Nations in New York. Some believe that it was intended to make Nasrallah believe that nothing was dangerous for him, let his guard down, and maybe even had a party saying, "Hey, come to the bunker, gang, let's take a look and listen in to what Bibi has to say," until there was that knock on the roof. So Republican Brian Mast shared a post suggesting that the talk was a diversion, and then he went on to say, "The United Nations is finally good for something." His speech, as you know, that long arm of Israel reaching anywhere, seems to be somewhat prophetic. Not only was Nasrallah taken out, but now we're dealing with a frightened, fearful Iranian nation that's wondering what's next. Where will the long arm of Israel reach? It's Rosh Hashanah today. We know there were 181 rockets that were launched, and Israel is waiting at this moment to determine what their retaliation will be. And I guess you would say the world is waiting to find out. Of course, in this vacuum, Biden and, of course, Kirby are going to speak out. Kirby says that we want to make sure that we can continue to do everything we can to try to prevent this from becoming an all-out war in the Middle East, especially with what's going on in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Really, diplomacy, how's that work so far? This is from our friends in Israel saying, here's the news flash. Anyone who hasn't been facing a seven-front war of annihilation, here's the news flash. Diplomacy gets you slaughtered. Military action, which is the only option in this case, should be welcomed and victory championed and not hindered or hampered by our friends. And then Sleepy Joe Biden has something to say. He says, because of this recent launch of these 180 plus ballistic missiles from Iran. By the way, let me get this out of the way. 5 years from now, when we look back upon this, we're going to realize how miraculous these events have been. 180 plus ballistic missiles, 0 casualties among Israelis. 2 people have been killed, one a Palestinian and the other a Jordanian, one in Jericho and one in Jordan. There are testimonies of these rockets that are falling. Either they're taken out completely by the IDF, Defense Forces, or they seem to be directed to non-threatening places, the ocean, unoccupied land, or whatever. So it is miraculous what has taken place. With that being said, if one of those ballistic missiles had hit an apartment complex, Israel would still be burying over hundreds of people at this time. So in the midst of all of this, Joe has said Iran has crossed a line. It's crossed the borders, and you know what? Sanctions are going to be imposed on it. And then there's this proportional response dogma that's out there. He goes on to say, but I will not support any attack on the nuclear sites in Iran. I will soon speak with the Prime Minister of Israel, and together we will discuss the nature of the response. But the response must be proportionate. How do you define proportionate, Joe? 180 plus ballistic missiles fired upon the civilians of your nation. What's proportional? We've got a heck of a week in front of us. The ceasefire, that's being proposed, of course, in Lebanon. Israel's foreign minister wants to make it clear, Israel Katz, is basically saying the only way that Jerusalem will agree to a truce with Lebanon's Hezbollah, the only acceptable way or terms will be for Hezbollah to disarm, I think that's going to happen, and move back 20 miles behind the Litani River. And I've given you a map there in the slides. Goes on to say, as long as this does not happen, Israel will continue its actions to ensure the safety of its Israeli citizens and the return of the northern residents to their homes. Does that sound familiar? Because you're going to hear it more and more. Why is Israel doing what they're doing now? The northern residents need to return to their homes and be able to live in safety. In the Gaza border district, 86% of the folks have moved back home. Interesting. Hats off to the Germans, German support. The German Federal Ministry announced that individuals who call for Israel's destruction by using the expression "from the river to the sea" will be denied German citizenship. And then he goes on, this new law goes on to counter calls for the destruction. Anybody that calls for the destruction of the Jewish state or claims that Israel and the Jews fabricated or exaggerated the Holocaust, this is a serious crime, and once again, citizenship will be taken from them. And then we have the United Nations. Israel Katz, Foreign Minister Israel Katz, decided to declare UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres persona non grata, which simply means a person who is no longer welcomed. Israel has banned the UN Secretary entry into the country. He goes on to say anyone who is unable to condemn Iran's criminal attack on Israel is not worthy to set foot on Israeli soil. And then truth spoken here. We, from time to time, print things out that we simply want to state the facts and truth in this crazy, mixed up, upside down, deceived, deceptive world that we live in. Here's what we got. According to world opinion, there is no legitimate way for Israel or any non-Muslim country to take out an Islamic terrorist. No amount of warnings, no amount of phone calls, dropped leaflets, knocking on the roof, warning that projectiles are coming at a certain time, that is not enough of a precaution. Even hostage rescue operations were condemned for killing terrorists as we're trying to release those that now it's close to a year that have been spent in captivity. With that being said, there's no legitimate way. Also, just so you know, according to anti-Semites, there's also no such thing as an illegitimate Muslim way to murder Jews. Truth spoken here. And then we have a dilemma. It's heart-wrenching to know the extent that Israel goes through in order to protect civilians. Israel just lost 8 soldiers. And this is an article that I just pulled out that has to do with the lengths that Israel goes to protect civilians. As I mentioned, 8 Israelis were shot dead by Hezbollah. And the morning's tragedy is the result. The result of this is the progressive decision made by IDF generals. Rather than turn the jihad-infested village in southern Lebanon to rubble, our special forces were sent in for a precision operation to spare civilian lives of those who were told to leave the village more than a week ago. The IDF is the most precise army in the world, but it has become an idol when the sons of the nation are being sacrificed for the sake of keeping, quote, civilian casualties low. We are at war. Casualties, even civilians, on the enemy side is a difficult part of the package of war. And the Lebanese have had almost 20 years to avoid war with Israel by keeping their country free from the filth of jihad. They chose not to. I've listed the names of the soldiers that were killed, and may their memories be a blessing. And then a couple more things before we end. I call this Iranian Humor. The new president, let's see if I can butcher his name, Mossad Perezikian. Close enough? In a press conference in Qatar on Wednesday, this Iranian president indicated that Iran does not want its conflict with Israel to escalate in a full-scale war. Duh. His quote, Iran aspires to peace and stability in the Middle East because no country can progress when there's war. Last month, he said that Iran is not looking for nuclear weapons. And during his recent trip to New York for the UN, he reported that Iranians don't want to fight and that it's Israel that wants to drag everybody into war and destabilize the region. I had to label this article Iranian Humor. You've got to be kidding. And finally, just a slide for you to see what the country looked like when the rockets were sent, 180 plus ballistic rockets from Iran. All our friends in Israel had been texting us, and literally over 90% of the country for over an hour and a half were in bomb shelters as these rockets came raining down on Israel. Notice the slide number 13. This is the red alert in Israel. Finally, we are going, Sharon and I are heading to Israel with a few friends of ours in about a month, so please keep us in prayer. But our normal The Land, the People, and the King tour that was scheduled for that time, we have moved back to March 6th, from the 6th to the 16th. And again, information will be out soon, but pray about joining us as we walk the land together. Remember, Israel at this time really doesn't need visitors. Israel needs friends. So be praying for our trip and think about joining us in March as we visit the land and walk the land and meet the people and worship our King together. That's it. God bless you and shalom. And remember, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.